Hi, and welcome to One Simple Recipe, where we're hoping to get you one step closer to better health. I'm Judy Matusky. I'm a registered dietitian and a licensed culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition. And today, this is all about herbs. We are going big time with herbs, not only in our meatballs that we're making, but also in the rice that we're going to create. This is a recipe that I found. I follow a chef, Molly Baz, and she is kind of known for her big, bold flavors. So I love some of her recipes, and I wanted to bring this one to you. I made a few modifications, and we'll talk about why and how and why I did that. But I think you're going to love it. Now, this does have several parts to it. Nothing difficult, but it does take a little bit of organization. So I want to kind of talk you through that as well. All right, so it's Herby meatballs with this Herby pickle salsa that's used with the rice that I made. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of stuff here, but we're using a lot of the same things, you know, in the meatballs and in the salsa and then in the rice. So it is I kind of think of this as sort of a 4-part recipe. The first part is making the rice. I did that ahead. I am just using a medium grain white rice. Nutritionally, I'm always recommending brown rice just to get the extra nutrition and the extra fiber. I think for this recipe, though, I really do think white rice is the way to go. So you don't really want a long grain basmati type rice. You want a medium or short grain because it's a little bit sticky. It kind of lends itself better to the rice sort of salad that we're going to make. I already cooked that ahead. You're going to use 2 cups of rice that's going to be cooked in whatever the amount of water that the package tells you to cook it in, and we're going to end up with about 4 cups of cooked rice. So I already did that. I've got it in a bowl, so that's been done. So that's sort of part 1. So part 2 is to create this herby pickled salsa. All right, so on that we're going to kind of walk through and put that together. So let's do that right now. So we have a bunch of herbs. This is not for anybody who's herb shy, because we are using 3 big bunches of herbs, or almost full 3 bunches of different herbs, tender herbs. So I already went ahead. Now, some of the things that this recipe does require, it's a little bit of the organization of kind of getting everything together, mise en place, get everything out, having things in front of you, and then work through the parts of 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I already chopped a whole bunch of herbs. There really isn't a measurement for them. It's really like 3 big bunches. I'm thinking it's probably 3 or 4 cups of herbs. So it's not a couple of tablespoons of herbs. We are really going strong on the herbs. And this is the herb time of the year, at least here in the Northeast. Fresh herbs are growing. I've got mint from our garden. I have some basil that my husband was growing in his greenhouse, but the herbs are going to be coming on strong right now. So really look for them when you're in the market. I already chopped up some ahead of time. I just wanted to show you the ones that I am using just because this is what I have and this is what I tend to like. I am using some fresh dill. All right, so I had a big bunch of fresh dill. I'm going to chop a little bit right now. I had a really nice big bunch of fresh mint that I just picked from the garden this morning. We don't have dill coming on quite yet. So dill and basil will be coming on a little bit in our garden. And I had, we have some in our greenhouse, but not in the outside garden. So, and then some fresh basil. So I'm doing mint, dill, and basil. You could do cilantro and parsley and chives. You could do a combination of any. You could do all one, but it is kind of nice just to do a mixture of 3 different ones if you have them. So I think I have enough mint in my mix, so I don't think I'm going to do any more mint, but I might, I'm going to need that bowl. I'll just chop up a little bit more dill. And the dill, now when it comes to tender herbs, you can usually use the stem in addition to the leaves of the herbs. Depending on, sometimes dill though, like these are pretty big, so they're a little bit on the woody side, so we don't necessarily want real woody herbs of the stems if they're going to be a little bit woody. So I am actually going to cut some of these thicker stems here because they're going to be a little tough. Now you can save these if you do keep a freezer bag of herbs and scraps of vegetables that you can freeze and then make a great vegetable stock. So if you'd like to do that, just kind of set those aside and put those in the freezer. Then when you get your herbs together, you're just kind of making a nice big bundle, right? We're going to roll it all together. so that it's nice and tight, so that when you go to chop it, then it makes it much easier. If not, it's just they're gonna be flying all over your cutting board, and it's gonna really be hard to chop down through the herb. All right, I have quite a bit of dill in there, so I'm not gonna use all of that, but that's about it. And I'm just gonna turn the pile a little bit. I'm gonna go back through it with my knife, because you do want these herbs minced fairly well. So it takes a few runs of your knife kind of over the herbs. Now, because there's so many of them being used in this recipe between the meatballs and the salsa that we're making, if you wanted to get out your food processor, probably wouldn't be a bad idea. It would save you a little bit of time in the chopping, if that's something you would prefer. I don't mind chopping. You know, for me, I love to cook, so it's pretty relaxing for me to spend some time chopping. So I don't mind it. But if you're tight on time, if chopping isn't something you enjoy doing, then by all means, go ahead and grab your food processor and throw all your herbs in the food processor, and you can get them all done at one time. All right, so we have plenty of herbs right now. So those are chopped. I chopped an English cucumber earlier, and I wanted to show you, because we kind of want like kind of a finer dice here. These are almost like little squares of cucumber, and if you're not sure how to do that, I wanted to show you. So I took the cucumber, and then I just kind of sliced it on the diagonal, so that we have, little diagonal slices. And then if you pile these up, I mean, they don't have to be on the diagonal, but it makes them a little bit bigger, so you get, more surface area to cut. Then you take your knife, and you just are going to kind of create little matchsticks in the cucumber. Now you have little strips of cucumber. Just kind of turn it. Now we're just going to go straight through with our knife. And as you do this, you get a dice of cucumber that is, they're all going to be about the same size, and they're all, little squares. And that's kind of what we want in this. We want them to be pretty much, kind of the same size. And that's the easiest way to do it, at least for me. I have a little bit more. This was a big cucumber, so I have a little bit left. So I'm not going to, I don't think I'm going to dice that. I think we have plenty of cucumber. So we have the cucumber, and we have, our herbs all ready to go. So we're going to use the herbs both in the pickled salsa that we're making right now, as well as some of those herbs are going to go in our meatball mixture. All right, so those are the two things that we have chopped. 4 scallions that I went ahead and just chopped. And again, same thing, we're going to use half of these in the salsa, and we're going to use half of these in the meatballs. So even though it does require a little extra chopping for this recipe, what's nice is that we're using a lot of these ingredients 2 different ways. So that makes it a little bit easier, and it doesn't require such a long list of ingredients. All right, so let's go ahead and let's create our salsa. Let me grab, because I'm going to use that other one first. Let me grab another bowl, bowl to make the salsa, and then we're going to add that to the rice. But let's do that separately. Okay, so for the salsa, we're going to, I'm going to follow the recipe here because I want to make sure I don't forget anything. All right, so we're going to use about a cup. I'm going to stir these herbs a little bit just to make sure that the mint, and the dill and the basil are really kind of combined. So when I'm using, when I'm adding it, I want to make sure I'm getting all 3 herbs in here. Okay, so let's just add, I'm going to say a little more than maybe half of this mixture. Are just going to go in for our salsa. All right. And then we're going to add half of which would be 2 chopped scallions. So this would be half of what we have here. And the other's going to go in our meatballs. All right, let me set that aside. And then we're going to add, let me flip this over. Now we're going to add what's making it pickled rice, pickled salsa. So it's an herby pickled salsa in and of itself, which we are going to use it just as is, as part of the recipe, but we're also going to use this to make our pickled rice. All right, so I have chopped up here. I had in this is because I had this in my refrigerator. The recipe does call for baby dill. I just had these baby gherkins in my refrigerators kind of at the end. So this is probably a little bit more than 8 small ones chopped up, but I just wanted to use them all up. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them all in. It's okay if it's a little bit more pickly. But if you don't have the small dill, then, you know, again, there's no real measurements, but I'm going to say it's probably about 1/2 cup of chopped dill pickle. So if you can do the baby gherkins, I think that works a little bit better. They're not quite as wet and soft as some of the bigger, you know, dill pickles can be when you chop them. So let's go ahead and add those. All right. And then we're going to add about 3 or 4 tablespoons of the pickle brine. And this is what was left in that jar. So I didn't measure it. It's probably close enough to that. So again, if it's a little bit more, a little bit less, I think that's fine. I'm just going to use it all since I have it. So that's what's helping to give this pickle flavor. So if you have pickles, save the pickle juice because it's so good as a marinade, in salad dressings, in like salsas. It's the salty component that you're adding. So now, the one thing with Molly's recipes, she is pretty heavy with salt, and she can be a little heavy-handed with some fats and oils, and she can be a little heavy-handed on the meats. So her recipes, although I enjoy them, they're not all for me. Some I can modify, which this one I did. I really kind of ratcheted down on the amount of salt that she was using. For my taste, I don't need it. I don't need that much. And I think for a lot of you, you might be, you know, kind of trying to cook with a little less salt or sodium in your diet. So we're kind of relying on these pickles and the little bit of the pickle juice to give us that little bit of salty flavor. But we are going to use just a little bit of salt because we're making so much, we still need a little extra salt. So I'm going to use maybe a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. You can leave it out. You can adjust later if you're being careful with that. Then we're going to use about 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper, which I just ground. And it's interesting because I read somewhere that if something calls for like a 1/2 teaspoon of ground pepper, and you take your pepper grinder and you grind it, and you go, oh, that's about a 1/2 cup. Most of it is probably half of what we really need in the recipe. So when you're grinding, I think it always looks like it's more than it is. So if it's calling for 1/2 teaspoon, you might only be grinding in there only 1/4 teaspoon. So I went ahead and pre-ground it because I really wanted to measure just to see. And this is 3/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Yeah, that's definitely, if I was using the pepper grinder, I would not have put that much in there, which you kind of want it because you want a little bit of heat from that. And then we're also going to, and this is your call. If you want to, you can add some crushed red pepper flakes or red pepper flakes. If you don't really want too much heat, you can leave it out. Molly uses a little bit more. I'm going to just go with, you know, probably about 1/2 teaspoon of it. I'm not going to put a lot in. I just want maybe a little bit of heat there. So we have so let me just go through the list. We have the herbs, we have the cucumber, we have the dill pickle chopped up, we have a couple of tablespoons of that pickle brine in here. We added the scallions. Now I'm just going to add a little minced garlic clove. That's going to go in. So you can do that on your microplane. You can do that in your garlic press. You can just chop it. Because I was chopping so much between the cucumber and the herbs and the scallions, I just went ahead and chopped my garlic as well, since I already had the knife out and I was really working with that. Then we did add the salt and we did add the red pepper. That's pretty much the base of the salsa. So here's where a lot of flavor really lives. It's this very intense flavor that's going to be used as a garnish at the end, and as well as to help create the rice. Now, the finishing touch to this is to add the olive oil. So this can be anywhere from about 1/3 cup till maybe a little bit more. It's really going to depend on how many herbs you're really using, depending on the size of the bunch of herbs you have. I don't have my measure. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to eyeball it. So because it's fairly, it's a sauce. It's a salsa. So you're going to need a little extra olive oil for this because we're using it really to help build the flavor in the rice, as well as we're going to use it almost like a salsa verde in a way. So you can use I would say about 1/3 cup of olive oil, but it could take as much as 1/2 cup. And that's okay because this is the flavoring agent that we're using for our to give our rice some nice flavor. And that was probably about 1/3 of a cup, I would say. And I think that looks pretty good. I might just drizzle a little bit of olive oil at the end. All right, so we have that. So this is the pickled salsa. Now, the next, I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside because we're gonna create the pickled rice here in a minute. But first, I really wanna walk us through the meatball mixture. I'm not sure if I might form a few meatballs. I'm not gonna roast them right now. They take about 18 minutes or so in the oven, in a 425-degree oven. Since we're not gonna really have the time to do that, wait, did I add the pickles? Oh, you know what I forgot to add? I forgot to add the cucumbers. Sorry about that. I forgot to add the cucumbers to they're sitting there. So we're using pickles and cucumbers. So fresh cucumbers as well as pickles. So let me pull this back over. So we want to have fresh cucumbers in here. That was a diced English cucumber. So it was almost a full cucumber. That was a pretty big one, so I probably used 3/4 of it. All right, so now we have our pickled cucumber herby salsa. There we go. That was the finishing touch that I just forgot. All right, put that over here. There's a little bit of some moving parts to this, so I had to reread this a couple of times just to make sure I was kind of getting everything. All right, so I have ground turkey. That's 93% lean ground turkey. That's going to go in our large bowl. You can use ground chicken. If you really want to go more meat forward, if you want to do ground beef or ground pork or a combination, that's really up to you. I almost always do ground turkey. As you notice in all my meatball recipes that we've done this month, ground turkey is really what I tend to use. All right, this is the remaining 2 scallions that we had chopped. I chopped 4 altogether. We used half in the salsa, and then we're going to use the other half here. Now we're going to add about a cup of herbs. You know what, because I just have what's left, this is probably a little more than a cup, I'm just gonna add them all because you can't really, in my opinion, have too many herbs. That's gonna make them nice and green and certainly full of nutrients from all those dark green leafy herbs. And then what I'm going to do on the side here, because actually the first step of putting this together was we really wanted to make like a little bit of a panade, which typically is breadcrumbs and milk, only we're going to use 2 eggs. All right, so 2 eggs and a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon. We've got a little bit of a shell in there. About a tablespoon of olive oil, and we're just going to mix that around. And this helps just to give a little bit of moisture to the meatballs. And the ground turkey is a little bit lean, so we definitely need that. We definitely need some moisture here because we don't want the meatballs to dry out. So just kind of whisk this together. This is just the 2 eggs, and about a tablespoon of olive oil. All right, so just kind of bring that together. That's good. All right, put this aside. Then we're going to use a cup of panko. Panko is the original called for breadcrumb for this recipe. Like I said in other videos, I don't usually have panko. That's not what I tend to cook with. So I just have more of my whole grain breadcrumbs. These are whole wheat bread that I just turned into breadcrumbs. I've been using them this is probably the 3rd time I've used them. I just made a whole bunch, and it's about a cup. So we're going to add that in. And then this, we just kind of want to mix this together, and we're trying to get this to kind of, we want the breadcrumbs to kind of absorb the egg and the oil. And this is what when I was saying, we're making that panade. Normally, a lot of times, especially, in a lot of Italian recipes for making meatballs, they'll use milk, and that helps to create this more moist panade that's going to help keep our meatballs from getting a little too dry when we bake them in the oven. So here, you can see it kind of comes together like a little bit of a paste. All right. And because I don't want to overwork the turkey as I mix it together, I think I'm going to add the remaining seasonings just to this panade, and then I'm going to add it with the herbs and the scallions and the turkey, just so it's so I can keep it a little bit separate. All right, so for the remaining ingredients, we're going to use a teaspoon of ground coriander. You could use the full seed if you wanted to. If you just have to use a mortar and pestle to grind it up. The fennel, I am going to use just the full seeds of fennel. And this is about a tablespoon of fennel. I'm not going to grind it up. I don't think it really needs to, because we'll get that fennel flavor, and it'll be fine in the meatballs. All right, so a little bit more than a tablespoon. And then just for an interesting little, I guess more Middle Eastern, Greek kind of flair, we're going to add about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I've been getting my cinnamon lately from this burlap and barrel. This royal cinnamon from Vietnam is amazing. I've been just sprinkling it on sliced apples, and it's just sweet. It's all you need. Oh, and I've been sprinkling it on like cottage cheese, on fruit, on everything. It's just really amazing. I've really been happy with it, so I think I'm going to keep ordering that. All right, so we have cinnamon, we have coriander, we have fennel, we made our panade. Now we're just going to add a little bit of, wait, did I add the pepper? I can't remember. I'm going to hold off on that because I think I might have. And then I'm just going to add a teeny bit of salt to here, maybe half a teaspoon. All right, and maybe a little bit of pepper, ground pepper. All right. All right, so that's our mixture with we just have some of our spices in here to help flavor our meatballs. So this is not only, I mean, the salsa itself is so flavorful, but the meatballs are too, because we're really bringing a lot of nice little, not only just the herbs, but also some spice. So I'm going to go ahead and now add this, and then I'm going to start out using my spoon to kind of mix all this together, have it come together, and then I'll get my hands in there because I know I'm going to have to. All right. So again, just trying not to overmix your meat is ideal, but you really, you have to get it mixed in. I mean, there's not much more you can do with that, but all right, so let's get this all mixed together. All right, so this I realize is a little bit, again, a lot of my recipes really tend to be pretty simple. This one I know is not, because it's a little bit more ingredients and there are a couple of parts here, but not hard at all. The only time-consuming thing is just chopping those herbs up, getting things chopped ahead of time. But if you use your food processor, then you're set to go. I mean, that'll make it go a lot faster. Other than that, I mean, really nothing is really that difficult. It's just making sure you have the ingredients on hand. But because I just loved this recipe so much that I really wanted to bring it to you, because again, when we're cooking light, I'm going to go in with my hands, they're clean. When you're cooking light, you're trying to get as many bold flavors in as possible. So anyway, so we're, it's so nice when you can come across recipes like this that have so many incredibly intense flavors, all of which are super healthy between the herbs and the spices and everything that we're pulling together here. It's not like our traditional spaghetti and meatballs that we might be used to, like in a red sauce. I think it's kind of fun to kind of get out of that mold and play around. Okay, so here's our meatball mixture, and we're gonna take and make, it's about 1/4 cup per meatball. So they are a little bit on the larger side. 1/4 cup, give or take. You could make a bunch of smaller ones. You could make them, I wouldn't make them any bigger than about 1/4 cup, because again, these are just like the meatballs we made last week, the Vietnamese meatballs. These are going to roast in the oven, and they have to cook all the way through. We're not cooking them again in a sauce. Don't make them too big, so it's really hard to get them to cook all the way through. So maybe 1/4 cup, these might be a little less than 1/4 cup. And they should fit all on this one sheet tray, which I have lined with parchment. And you're going to put these into a 425-degree oven. And they take, I don't know, you can start checking them at maybe around 17 minutes. It might take up to 20 minutes, just again, it depends on the size of how big you're making them or how small you're making them. That don't really matter. Now, Molly's recommendation was to put your sheet tray right at the very bottom of the oven. Like not on a rack, but the actual bottom of the oven. I haven't done that. That makes me a little nervous. So I just put the rack at the lowest rack you can, the lowest level in your oven. And that's where I would roast these on because you really want to really brown them up. All right, so this makes anywhere between 12 and 16, I think, depending on the size of the meatballs. So they're going to take, like I said, anywhere from maybe 16, 17 minutes up to maybe 20 minutes. Just depends. We just want to check on because, again, if you're using ground turkey or anything really lean, you don't want to overcook them because then they will get a little bit on the drier side. But even if you do, they're still going to taste great. I mean, they just might be a little bit on the dry side. All right, so I'm going to put these off to the side. So I would, again, I would roast. So I don't have my oven on right now. I'm not going to put it in the oven because I'm going to roast these a little bit later this afternoon. But I think the star of the show is this pickle rice and this pickled salsa. That to me, the meatballs are fantastic. But what I love about this is I really love the salsa and I love the pickle rice. But I do want to just point out, let me pull this back over because look at, again, these are almost green. They really are. There's so many herbs between the scallions and the herbs. These meatballs are really, really herby. And I was not joking on that. All right. So we have about 4 cups of cooked rice. I followed the directions, I let it sit for 10 minutes, then I fluff it. I have to admit, I make a lot more pasta than I do rice. I like rice, I just like pasta better. So I don't always cook rice. So I always have to look at the directions. I don't have a rice cooker because I just don't cook enough rice to warrant me buying one. So I just did it in a pot like this. I followed the directions, took about 20 minutes to cook, then it sit for 10 minutes, then I fluffed it up. And then this is about 4 cups, maybe a little bit more than 4 cups, but give or take in this bowl. Now, we're gonna take our pickled salsa. So this is just super easy. Basically, we're not adding anything else to this to the rice, except the pickled salsa. And we're gonna let me just grab take that back. Let me just grab it. We're gonna use 2 cups of our pickled salsa in our pickle rice, all right? So grab it. We already have it all mixed together. So here's our 1 cup. And then let's grab another cup. And then it wouldn't hurt to get a little bit of the pickle juice, the juice that's at the bottom of the bowl that now has formed. I would just maybe get a couple tablespoons of that and add it. That's just gonna really be delicious with our rice. All right. Then all we're doing is we're just going to kind of fold this together. And there's our herby pickle rice. And you can taste it for seasoning if you needed to add, if you wanted to add a little more spice, if you wanted it to be a little bit spicier, you could add some more red pepper. If you wanted to add, if you do want a little more salt, which you may, you can add a little bit more. I usually try to go as low as I can with that and still have great flavor. But that's always depends on your palate and your health concerns, okay? So here we have it. So I'm just trying to break up that rice a little bit. But the rice is great. This is medium or short grain rice, preferably not the long grain. I don't think that's gonna work quite as well. All right, so here's our pickle rice. And so there's our beautiful pickle rice. So the way this would be assembled, all right, because I don't have the meatballs to do this, but basically you'll take a bowl. You can grab a bowl here. All right, so we take a bowl and you'll, you add your pickle rice to the bottom of the bowl. And the pickle rice you're going to make this pickle rice ideally if you're cooking your rice as you're making everything, and then your rice is going to be nice and warm, and you're going to add your pickle salsa to the rice, which helps the rice even absorb some of that flavor even a little bit more. And then you'll most likely serve it. You can serve it warm or you can serve it room temperature. I even like this rice cold. It's great. You can make like a nice little rice bowl with this the next day for lunch with your meatballs. All right, so you can do your rice. Then you're going to put maybe, 2 or 3 meatballs depending on the serving size. Then because we have all of this pickled salsa left over, right? This is gorgeous. So we're going to be using this for a lot of things, but we're going to add this to the top. So you're going to add your meatballs, you're going to add your pickled salsa, and then what you're going to want to finish it with is some Greek yogurt. This isn't particularly Greek yogurt, it's just regular yogurt, which is fine too, but just plain yogurt. So you're going to do a dollop of yogurt at the top. So we have the pickled rice, your meatballs, your salsa, and then a dollop of yogurt. And it is, that flavor combination is phenomenal. So this is, again, kind of a 4-part recipe, nothing hard, just this is definitely a recipe that you want to read through a couple of times to get the idea of the order of how things are going to come together. And also because we're sharing ingredients in a couple different ways. So, we're using some of the herbs in our meatballs, we're using some of the herbs in our salsa, which is going to end up in our rice. You want to just kind of know how the roadmap to follow for the recipe, so it doesn't get you real confused. But if you get everything together and just have it out, and then you can sort of assemble it, again, so worth it. I think this is probably one of my favorite meatball recipes that I think I've ever come across. The only modifications that I really made with Molly's is that I did ratchet back on the sodium. She was using a lot of extra salt that she was adding to the salsa, to the rice, to the meatballs. I added some, but a lot less than what she would have added. And she actually recommends salting the yogurt in addition to that. And I know that salted plain yogurt is really good. I love to do that. I just because there's so many layers of salt in this, I just think I would go with a plain dollop of yogurt, but that was something that I just made some changes to. All right, I would love it if you try this. Let me know what you think. I love it. We're going to have it tonight for dinner. Can't wait. All right, stay well until next week. I know this is the 1st of May, but starting next week, we're in the beginning of May, starting next week, we're going to really focus on some vegetarian options. Since we did a lot of things with ground turkey or lean ground meats, we are going to focus more on like using tofu and how to use it, talking a little bit about the different types of tofu, because I do get so many questions about that. Everybody wants to eat tofu. We think it's healthy. We know it's healthy. We think we should be eating more of it, but we just don't really know what to do with it. So I thought we'd spend some time over the next couple weeks bringing you some recipes around that. All right, again, stay well. Reach out to Athens Nutrition if you need any nutrition guidance. All of our registered dietitians and licensed nutritionists are here to help you. Just give us a shout and we will connect. All right, stay well till next week.